Not okay. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the I Am a Human Being podcast. I'm here with the wonderful Jon Prince. He is an amazing creator. He is very popular on Instagram, which we're going to talk about today for anybody who wants to be a creator and who wants to grow. But most importantly, he's amazing at giving great advice in mental health, spirituality, helping you as a confidence coach and mental health coach. And I have so many questions for him today. He's also a wonderful dad, has a wonderful family, a great marriage. And there's going to be tons of questions, relationship questions for him that we have today too. You probably know him as the perception coach on Instagram. He makes amazing videos and I totally love his authentic vibe. He's one of the people I can say that is very genuine. If you guys know me, you know I'm not like talking around. If I don't like someone, I'm going to tell it. But he's a wonderful person. I really like him. We just met, I think, a month ago, started to do like a podcast, and I really consider him as like a good person that I'm looking forward to like grow a friendship with. Yeah, I'm really excited to be with you here, Jon. And I'm really curious about a bunch of stuff, a bunch of teachings you teach, and want to dive deeper. Yeah, I'm excited to be with you here. Would you introduce yourself in a way that you actually want to? Express yourself in a way that you want to. What is it that you do? Is it the kind of value that you give to people? And yeah, what are you excited about?
Wow, thank you so much. That's the best introduction ever. Really appreciate it, and yeah, that is awesome. And yeah, we've connected for a little while now, and it's been amazing. I'm learning loads from you, Star. So yeah, really excited to be here and to share some tips and to chat. In terms of me, really, yeah, I'm a life and mindset coach, and what I do is I help empower people to really discover who they are, to create meaning in their life, and to live with confidence and empowerment. So that means being able to make their own decisions, their own choices authentically. It's not really living out that life of, I should be doing this, but actually sitting down and thinking, what do I want to do? What do I want to create? And who do I want to be? Because a lot of who we are is not really who we are. And I think once we start peeling that away and finding out what are we genuinely interested in, curious about, then we can really uncover that and live, a life that we choose to do, and make an impact with that as well.
I love that. I actually want to jump in right into the authentic interest of people, because a lot of people are confused on what is it they really like. They always ask, what do I value? What should I do? What should I choose? What's the right thing to choose? And it seems that the position that they choose things from a lot of times is tainted by patterns. And I saw you speaking about unconditional acceptance as well. Maybe you want to dive into that even with this question or a little bit later. It depends on what you want to do. But my question would be the interest aspect, because a lot of people chase validation and present themselves in a way that they think they're going to be liked by others. What is it? How do we get the interest, the authentic interest? How can we explore that? How can we practice that? How can we practice being ourselves? And how can we be authentically ourselves? And what does it actually give us in form of benefit?
Yeah, I love that question. And there's actually a question that I recommend people ask themselves that is really a great way to step into finding out what they want and being their authentic selves. I think, and it links well with unconditional self-acceptance, because unconditional self-acceptance is the idea that I have value and worth as a human being, and that's absolutely unchangeable. It doesn't matter what you do, what mistakes you make, what you say, how you change, you always have worth as a human being, and also everybody else has that as well. It's just a belief that I have. It's something that I learned and started to embody and really believe in, and it's really powerful. It's a great place to live, because it means that we don't have to judge everybody else as a person based on what they do. We can actually find out why they're doing what they do, what led them to that, and help them change. Because when our worth is attached to our actions, then if we mess up and make a mistake, it means we're a bad person. And if you're a bad person, A, you can't change that because you're now a bad person. And B, we act in accordance to what we identify with. So then the moment somebody becomes a bad person, they then start doing bad things consciously or subconsciously. And that's part of the problem with the whole rehabilitation program of people are told to feel bad for who they are and what they've done. Well, when somebody's in that place, they're not going to want to change. And we all experience that to some level, where we might feel that, you know, I've done something bad and then I feel like I'm a bad person. And then that becomes a story. It becomes an identity that we live into. So the idea of that unconditional self-acceptance is saying that I can rate my behaviors, I can change my behaviors and say, look, I messed up, I did something wrong, but it doesn't make me wrong. And there, once we really, really get that and really start living from that place, there's no more place of freedom than that, because it's so powerful. And what you find is, as you develop that unconditional acceptance for yourself, you feel better about yourself, you're less judgmental of others. And from that place, you don't want to do bad things to people because you feel good about yourself. Because the reality is, people do bad things to other people because they feel bad about themselves, right? Hurt people hurt other people. And that's why they lash out. It's how we feel. I know if I'm having a bad day and I'm frustrated or I'm worried about something and I'm feeling like in pain inside me, that's what comes out. Versus when we're feeling good about ourselves, you know, someone can really do something that really can get to you, and you can really handle that from a different place if you're feeling good about yourselves or accepting yourself, because you just see them as a flawed person that makes mistakes like all of us, without having to be so critical. And in terms of where we can really decide what we want, the question for people to ask themselves, and I didn't even ask myself this for like the first 30 years of my life. I was just doing things for other people or doing things I thought I should do. And then I finally stopped and asked, well, what do I really want? And not feeling selfish about that as well, because it felt selfish when I remember I read a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. And the book was really powerful for me, because it, first off, it kind of like completely laid out how I was behaving and what was happening in my life. And then it gave some practical steps to be able to overcome that. And one of the challenges in this book was, it was to do everything for yourself for a week. So just live a week in the life of, you don't have to think about everybody else. You just get to have, it's like a bit of a selfish week where you say, what do I want? What do I want to do? What would I like to do? And it felt really uncomfortable for me. I felt like I was like bad for doing that. You know, I should be considering other people. And I remember at the time I was playing poker, and that's what, before coaching, I played poker professionally. And I remember living with friends that didn't play poker, and I was one of my friends came home from work and he was like, hey, do you want to watch some TV or something? And I was like, no, I'm gonna go and play poker because I need to play. And he was like, yeah, cool, sure. But I'd been living in a world of, I can't do things that might upset other people. Even like me wanting to go and play poker because he'd asked me to do something, I felt like I had to say yes to everybody. It was really, really like full scale, the place I was coming from. And then he was like, no, go for it. Yeah. And then I start to see that when I ask for what I want, and I start to ask people to support me with things that I wanted, making requests, people are really happy to help you, especially the people that care about you and your true friends. And I really found that, like, I just not been asking myself that question. What do I want to eat? Where do I want to go? What do I want to wear? What do I find interesting? Because I was always playing the guessing game of what should I, what would look good? What would other people like? And so I never really knew who I was and what I liked. And so I got to, 30 years of age and never really found that out. It was always, let me do something that other people will like so that I can become popular, and the more I tried to do it, the less popular I became.
Yeah, it's the paradox of, if you chase the validation of others, a lot of times you're just being seen as needy, inauthentic. But if you be yourself and find your value and do the things you value from a place of, not from a place of compulsions, of course, which would be addictively reacting to jealousy or neediness or other patterns, but from a place of, this is what I like, this is what I want. And a lot of people, they don't feel deserving. And I love that you like the selfishness week. It's actually related to Mark Freeman talks about this with stealing happiness, because a lot of people don't feel deserving. So they think they're not deserving of this. So he says, just steal it, just take it. And in the beginning, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but over time, you see that you actually are deserving of the good things. People don't feel good enough to make a podcast. People don't feel good enough to start a business. And he says, just steal it, take it. And the more you do it, that's not stealing money from someone else or anything, but the more you do it, the more you show your brain that you're actually good enough. So I love that. When you coach, right? You do one-on-one coaching. When you have a new client, what is the first thing that you do with that client on the call?
Yeah, so the first thing really is we'll jump on a call. It's the first time I'm meeting somebody, and I just want to find out what their challenge is or what their goal is. So they're either being held back by something or they want to move towards something. And a challenge and a goal are pretty similar because they're both an obstacle. The goal can be an obstacle. I want to get to that place and I don't know how, or I want to get there quicker, or the challenge is just right in front of us and we want to go over that. So I want to find out what that is. And the first thing I want to do is just show them it. I want them to show them what the challenge or the goal is, because we see it on the surface. Somebody might have a goal of, I want to write a book, or I want to get in a relationship, or whatever that is. And then we really need to see why that's not happening right now and get super clear on it, and then paint that picture and then show what life is like if we carry on from that place. Because a lot of the problems that we have in the short term are in fact long-term problems that if we don't address them now, they can impact us for the rest of our lives. So showing them that completely in the beginning is a really powerful step. And then I want to find out what their goals are, and more importantly, are they their real goals? Because somebody can have a goal of writing a book, but their goal of writing a book is because they think that's what they should do, because society's told them that if you write a book, that's a cool thing to do, or that's just what people do. And then, there's some great questions I'll ask, like, if you did write that book and you got there and you achieved that, how excited would you be out of 10? Like, how much would that mean to you? What would that mean to you? And if somebody can't answer that question, they're probably not their goal. They've just got a goal that someone else has given them. So I want to find out, is this really something for you? Are you excited for it? Because quite often people are saying, well, I'm not motivated. I don't have any motivation. I'm lazy. Well, yeah, you're probably lazy and not motivated because you're moving towards something you don't really want to do. Because anything that you achieve when you work really hard, it's going to be tough. There's going to be times you want to give up. There's going to be lots of challenges, and there's going to be lots of things you just don't enjoy doing. I remember when I was first putting subtitles in my videos and did it all myself. And this was before like Instagram creates automatic captions for you. I'd have to use an app and spend like an hour and a half on each video to get all the subtitles done and get it all sorted. Like, I wouldn't do that if I didn't really care about it and it wasn't important to me and I didn't really enjoy it. If that was just me doing a job that I thought I should do, I'd have just quit. I wouldn't have done it. So it's really when someone's, lazy or they're not moving towards it, maybe it's just not their goal. So I want to find out, like, what is it you want to move towards? And then what are the fears or the doubts that are blocking people from moving towards it? Because there are real, genuine fears, like you go out and you get hit by a car. That's something you should be cautious of and, take steps for. But then there's fears of like fear of being embarrassed in front of other people, which again, it's not pleasant. You don't want to be embarrassed. But if we have a belief that that absolutely must not ever happen and that is the worst thing that could ever happen if it did, that's just going to be so restricting. And if we can just see what these really are. And it's funny because when you put them on the table and show them to somebody, quite often they say, oh, that's so silly. why has that been happening? But it's just been floating around in the subconscious, and we make it conscious and see it. And so, well, yeah, it is silly. Do you want it to keep stopping you? No. Cool. Let's craft some steps and let's get you moving in the right direction so that it no longer holds you back. And from a values perspective, it's really finding out, is somebody living into what's most important to them, what they value, or are they valuing things like comfort and safety and looking good? And if those are the things that are important, they're going to be driving all the behaviors. So it's really initially just seeing everything exactly how it is, not from a place of judgment. There's just, that's how it is. Those are the behaviors. That's what's happening. Do you want to keep on doing that? Or is there something else or something more for you? And then let's lean into that.
I love that. How big are the topics of, for example, relationships in your coaching? Like not only friends relationship, but romantic relationships, I know. But it seems nowadays that it's harder and harder for people to connect. It's harder and harder for people, especially adults, to even find friends. And when you come on this path and find out that you can do things differently, sometimes you estrange yourself from the community that you used to be in because maybe they don't want to grow, that maybe your old friends don't want to grow the same way you want to grow. And now you stand there. And there might be also people who, for example, always been a loner, but now see how important it is to have a community, to have friends. How would you help someone or show them, for example, how to grow relationships or how to grow friends in a world like today? Because even though it might be harder to connect, as human beings, we still have to do it because connection is essential for any well-being of a person. People go crazy who don't have connection. So what can you do? What tools do you give people to build those connections or grow those relationships when they stand there by themselves and don't know how to do it?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think it's just important to note that relationships are at the heart of everything, connections at the heart of everything. We really want it, whether we know it or not, we want to connect with other people. It's amazing. So the first place starts with connecting with ourselves. Like if we don't know who we are and we're not accepting of who we are, it's very, very difficult to connect with others because we're walking around hiding. You know, you're going into a social group scared of, well, someone's going to ask me questions about myself and I don't know what to say. So everything becomes scary. So that first place really is building the relationship with ourselves, getting to know ourselves. What do I like? What don't I like? And also becoming our own best friend. And from that place, if we actually build this place of, doesn't mean we have to be perfect or anything. It's completely the opposite. It's I can like myself and be okay with myself as I am and build that out. And then once you've got that, then you can go into relationships with others. And it's really seeing like every time we're interacting with other people, it's a relationship, whether that's a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be a romantic relationship. And the one thing that shifted for me that I think was important, well, there's a couple of things. First was I wanted to connect with people that had the right values. Because initially I was like, well, just does this person like me? That was the most important thing. But that didn't really work out because, yeah, lots of people like me, but lots of not always the right people. And so when you start saying, well, what do I value? So for me, it was like I really valued kindness, respect, loyalty, trust, honesty. And these are all things that I valued, but I didn't realize and I didn't really know. So once I knew that, then I would look for that in the people that I was connecting with. You know, are they treating me kindly? Are they being respectful to me? And that could be things like, are they listening to me when I'm talking? Are they asking me questions? Are they interested? And that allowed me to kind of cut out the people that didn't make me feel good. Because those people that didn't make me feel good, they did like me because it was like I was the person that would hang around. But then I realized, well, actually, no, I don't feel good. And I'm not feeling the values that I want are there. So you can use that as a filter. So that's a great place to start. And then the second place, which is probably the most powerful when it comes to building relationships, is are you adding value to that relationship yourself? Because if we're always going in looking to take, like, what's this person going to do for me? What's this person going to give me? Then we're not really adding anything. So how can we expect to meet quality people that want to spend time with us when all we want to do is come and take? So not only is this great for building relationships, but it's great for us as well, because you feel really, really powerful and you feel secure in yourself when you have something to give. It's like being the restaurant versus being the customer coming in the restaurant. If
Mhm.
you're the restaurant and you create not just food, but good quality food that people can't wait to come and sample, you're going to be popular as a result of that. And you're going to be secure as a result of that. You're going to have a great business. And versus the person who goes in to be fed, is the restaurant that's doing the feeding. So if we're always taking, it's like we're the person going into the restaurant,
Mhm.
wanting them to give us the food and always wondering, are they open? Oh, can they cook for me today? But will I get this? Versus once we become that person that provides value from a relationship perspective, and you can bring this into any, am I adding value to this person? Am I making them feel good? Am I,
Mhm.
and not doing it. Here's the ultimate key of this, not doing it to get something back, because that's when it flips on its head. If it's, well, I'm going to make myself valuable, I'm going to give to others, but I want them to appreciate it. And I want them to say thank you. And I want them to give me something back. Now you're back in scarcity, because it's always a fear of, well, I'm doing it to get something. But when we
Mhm.
give without attachment, or we're giving because we genuinely want to, what we do is we make ourselves not more valuable as an actual person, because our worth is from an unconditional self-acceptance space is unchangeable, but we make ourselves useful, which is good for building confidence and good for building our sense of security as well.
I love that. I actually, before this podcast, I just had a call with my best friend. He actually lives in Abu Dhabi. His name is Ify, and I know him since college. And he was the most popular person I've seen on campus, like literally. And he lives like, I think he told me he lives by the golden rule. Treat other people how you want to be treated. But it was so funny. Like he tells me the story, and I always saw it. He once walked with his teacher across campus, just like they had to walk together across campus. It was a big campus, like a city, Kelsa Long Beach, and they walked across campus, and he like everybody. They met so many people that he had to say hello. He had to like stop everywhere with that teacher, like every 10 meters to say hello and be. They had like a happy conversation or like that would dap him, and at the end, I think the teacher asked, "Evie, are you selling drugs?" I cannot believe everybody knows you like this. And it was literally him. And he told me this today. He always tries to give some, like, make people happy, but from like a real, like, being interested and like boost them up, but not from a place, I think, of like getting like the feeling or like getting validation. Is just that's naturally how he always been, and he has the ability to really make people feel good, and that's what we want in relationship. Like we don't want someone who's constantly venting. Like I know there's those addictive venting relationships where both people are like taking from each other, like every time something bad happens to them they vent to them. But these relationships you don't want to be in, because those two people don't really, to be honest, care about each other. They only care about the way the other person makes them feel, right? So yeah, it's interesting, the dynamics between people, and I think you explained that so well. My follow-up question would be, could you give an example in your life of you putting those things to actions? Maybe like small examples with your wife, with your kids, with your friends. Maybe you can think of some scenarios where you're conscious of um, giving people or also receiving, or why is this friend your friend? What are the values where you choose, or is there such a thing as connection, that's just a thing that happens between people, or is it a mixture between connection and value? So I know I gave like a bunch of questions, but just to like give some examples, I'm sure you have a good answer to what I just said.
Yeah, no, it's so connection is like this thing that's happening on a deeper level. There's the stuff we can explain, and there's the tips and strategies, and then there's stuff we can't explain. It kind of happens as a result, and it's connections, that the deeper stuff. I can explain a lot of things about my wife that I really like, that really allow me to connect with her. But then there's a lot that I can't explain as well. The same way that, you walk in a room and you meet somebody, and within 2 or 3 seconds, you know if there's someone that you want to connect with or not. And you can't really explain that. And that's something that happens. Some of the things that she does really well is when we're with each other. She's very present. She's not on her phone.
Yeah.
She's, engaging, asks me lots of questions, and really listens. And I've always loved that. And because I felt like I'm being appreciated.
I think that's
And
like the space that you give a person, right?
yeah,
You're giving like the person a space to express themselves. I think that's a big thing for me when I have coaching calls or interact with people. I think what people sense is that I don't have to bring in my ego, um, or I need to get something. I can just like be open. Is that, would you say it's like a space that people give from a non-neediness?
yeah. Do you know what? I think the term you mentioned there is important. It's non-neediness, but it's also not having to prove or ego, because like
Exactly.
true coaching isn't actually, there's a lot of misconceptions about coaching, but coaching actually isn't offering advice. Coaching is finding out from somebody with good questions and listening to them and holding a space for them to figure stuff out for themselves. Like mentoring is giving advice, and in this conversation, we'll give advice and tips that are useful because maybe we've been in that spot before and we've experienced something that can help someone who's having a difficulty navigating it. But like the coaching side is like you just getting curious and asking someone questions. You have to put your ego out of the way, because you might sit there going, well, I know what's best for this person, or I can tell them what to do. And it takes putting ego aside to ask them to figure it out for themselves, because
Yeah.
you have to get out of your own way. I found it very difficult in the early days of coaching, because I was so used to just giving advice and
Yeah.
just to sit and just listen and bracket my own assumptions and judgments and just let someone talk, and then stay curious. Is like, it's a real skill that's difficult to do.
Yeah.
But you notice people that are good at that, when it's not, I want to say it's difficult to do. It's really simple, but it takes like practice, because we spent years
Yeah.
giving advice, taking advice, and not really been trained in somebody saying, hey, what do you want? Or yeah, why do you feel like that? Or what would be, because there's no advice giving. There's no, we put our own like usefulness out of the way for a moment to let someone have that space.
Well, it's challenging because most people are so self-centered, right? Even most coaches are so, oh, I'm the biggest, you gotta like, and they don't really focus on helping. They just like, oh, I'm so great. People pay me, da 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 da, you know? So
Mm. Yeah, I think that's when I see, what I love to see is when like a client is talking about how much change they've made for themselves and what they've done for themselves, because the coach is just facilitating that.
exactly.
Versus when you see, people talk about these gurus and coaches like they're the best thing in the world. Well, there's a distance between the guru and the person that can make people feel like uncomfortable. Whereas we want
Yeah.
to be like on a level that we're all just on different stages of our journey, and we all have something to teach each other. Because
Yeah.
I learned so much from my
I just want to
family,
say, yeah, I
from
learned so much from my clients as well, you know, through their practice, their problems, and that helped me to help more people.
yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's I've learned a lot, because I've had over 1,000 hours now of coaching, one-on-one coaching with people from people all around the world. And that's a lot of listening, and that's a lot of people having challenges and goals from different angles, which has given me a different perspective on how people work and what people think and what works and what doesn't work. But it's all just learning, and people fascinate me, like with the strategies that they come up with that work, but also the things that
Yeah.
they're doing that don't work. And you're just learning so much every time you sit with someone.
You know what would be interesting? If we on some point make another cut, because we are both two coaches and we've done it like for a long time. If we make like one podcast where we coach each other, like, or like ask each other questions, or the most best like tools that we usually use, or whatever, maybe something comes that's opening up. Maybe on some point, we're going to do that. I don't think a lot of people have done that yet. Maybe because they can't take their ego out, or I've never seen like two coaches like coaching each other on a
Yeah,
call.
definitely, because being coached is really vulnerable, right? I know this from my
Yeah.
own. I've had lots and lots of coaching along these last few years, and it's easier to coach than be coached, because when you're being coached, you're on the hot seat. You're answering questions and you're vulnerable. You've got to share things that maybe you don't want to share, or go to places you don't want to go and get uncomfortable to create those results. So I think that'd be a really exciting thing to do, or scary thing to do, to be honest, and vulnerable, but it would be really powerful. But one of the things I've learned from our conversations just over the last few weeks, I think I mentioned to you recently, I've had quite a lot of personal shifts where we approach similar topics from different angles, and from seeing the same thing from a different angle can just open things up. Like I've noticed in the last few weeks just how I use social media to connect with an audience and share a message and create content, which I love doing, and also to run a business. But I noticed how I'd gone back to old compulsions of like picking up the phone or wanting to check the likes, or just overusing it. And it was only from the way that you were explaining things and building emotional fitness that I managed to then see that I was doing that, but from just a different place. And I started to become more mindful again, more present again, use the phone a lot less when I'm with my kids. Just, I told my daughter the other day, she found this so funny. I said, if you see daddy on his phone, you can say to him, daddy, put your phone away. I want to have a conversation with you. And now she finds it really funny because every time she sees me on the phone, she says, daddy, put your phone away.
Right. You have your personal, oh, you found a cheat code.
Yeah.
You have your personal, tell someone that she should get money for this at this point. You have your personal, put your phone down in person with you. That's amazing.
Yeah, so she can be my police woman, so she can patrol me and make sure I'm on form. But yeah, it's just really noticing all this stuff, but and seeing it from different angles can be really helpful too.
I love that. Maybe the aspect of, okay, first off, let's go there first. Questions is one of the most powerful things that we have. With questions, if I make a video on social media and ask a question in the first line, a lot of times I will have watch time. Why? Because everybody wants to answer a question, right? If we say, what's your favorite color? You at least stay long enough to think about, oh, what was my favorite color? Even if you scroll right after, right? With questions, we can maneuver an entire conversation. Most people are not that conscious, so they will maneuver with the question because their brain, they just follow with the identification of the brain. If you are more conscious and you are not easily being manipulated by thoughts and emotions, we can, when someone tries to manipulate us with questions, be like, okay, wait, that person tries to veer me in a certain direction. So it can be used in a positive way and a negative way. In coaching, we use it in a very positive way to let the client find their own answers, to even direct the clients a lot of times in a direction where we want to let them find themselves, because we have practiced this before, so we want to put them in that direction. But we also, it's more, a lot of times, very powerful for them to recognize it themselves. Yes, because we are so respected, we probably could do it without questions because they're going to take the answers. But if anybody wants to know an interpersonal relationship, a lot of people don't like being told what to do. But if you ask them questions in a direction that could be healthier, and they find it out themselves, they're like, oh, damn, okay, let me do that. But if you tell them, they're like, nah, I don't want to be told what to do. So my question would be, what are some of the most helpful questions, most important questions that you ask your clients in the sessions for them to have improvements?
So yeah, there's a few questions that definitely stand out that I think are really useful. One thing that I will just share, because I know we were talking about communication and how to connect with others. One of the things to be aware of is when we're asking other people questions, are we asking open or closed questions? So open questions will allow that person to really like open up and share something about them, whereas closed questions just shut it down. And if you're wanting to connect with people and build your communication skills, going in and saying somebody, they might say, hey, I went on holiday, and you go, oh, was it good, or did you like it? And then they've just got a yes or no answer, and it might shut down the conversation. Versus you say, oh, you went on holiday. You'd say, what was your favorite thing about the holiday? And now they can tell you about, oh, well, we had this day where we went to the mountains and we saw this. And then you say, well, what did you like about that? And these are now open questions that allow you to find out about that person. Some people won't want to go there and won't, but most people do, because they like to talk about themselves or they like to share. But keeping it open keeps it open. It keeps the conversation open. And it's a great way to connect with people. And you can also just learn about them, like learn about that person. Is this someone that's interesting? Is this someone that I want to connect more with? So that's just a good thing to have in mind. When it comes to clients, it's really funny because lots of people come to coaching expecting to just, right, come in, here's my problem, now tell me how to solve it, right? And that's like what so many people are expecting to have happen. And the question and my clients, I know you're going to ask this. They come in, they sit down and say, what would make this an impactful call for you today? And they're like, I know you're going to ask this, and I'm not sure. And it's funny that often when they come into a call and they don't know what they want, or they're not sure, or they
done that.
I asked them that. Yeah.
What you ask in the beginning, what would make this an impactful call for you today?
Yes. Right. Because I want to know, what do they want to get out of the call? Because with coaching,
love that. That's such a great question.
Yeah.
That's smart as fuck.
Right. So
really, yeah.
But it's just
it leads it from the right place, right start, in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's letting them lead, because coaching is as a coach, you're a leader. You can ask questions, but the client's directing the conversation because they're the one that knows where they want to go. So you just helping keep them on point. If at the beginning of the conversation, we'll put a flag out of, here's where we want to go. What would make this impactful? What would you most want to achieve today? And they might say, I want more confidence, or I want to improve my relationships. And we can get more specific and find out where, and then put the flag down, and then I'll help bring them back to it. Unless we find out that really that's not what they really wanted, and halfway through the conversation, we found out that there's a different problem that we need to address, but we can bring them back. But that question, what would make this impactful for you, that's them thinking for themselves about what they want, which is what most people don't want, because they go, tell me what we should work on today. And I go, great, let's work on your scheduling and your routine, or let's do this. We're just not going to solve the real problem, because the real problem is they're not asking themselves that question. Wake up in the morning, what do I want to do today? What do I like? What would be important for me?
Yeah.
So we're setting out there. So that's a great question to ask there.
And it makes them, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go on.
No, go ahead. You're the guest.
Yeah. So, it gets them to think for themselves and what they really want. I was going to share another question, but I'll come to that after.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And it makes them the leader, right? It trains them to be a leader instead of like constantly just waiting for you to do the thing. My follow-up question would be like, what kind of answers do you get usually when you ask that question? Like, what are some examples of, like real examples, not general ones, from like your recent calls, or like overall, like, oh, I want to grow, I don't know, I want to get my ex back, or I want to make $1 million. Like, I know these might not be close, or there might be, but yeah, what are usually the kind of answers you get?
The typical answers I get are what's the immediate problem for this person. So the immediate thing is, it might be like, I'm just feeling overwhelmed and I want to get rid of that, or I'm lacking confidence and I want to be more confident, or there's a particular area. I work with a lot of poker players, and they might have a particular area that's not working for them right now. Like, I get really frustrated, and in poker there's a term called tilted, which means just like really angry or emotionally frustrated at a situation. They might say, I get tilted all the time.
And you cannot show your emotions put them down, right? I mean, I read that in Dan Bilzerian's book. He said it gave him like a real bad relationship with his emotions, because he had to push them down, or because he couldn't show the other guys that he was excited about winning, because then he was like, oh, they're not going to play with me again. Even though I think because he was checking on that with his brain, he was like even freaking himself out that he builds a bad relationship, that actually gave him over time, because that is a compulsion. But so yeah, go ahead. With the poker players, are they like having the same like kind of issue?
They will have a lot of the same issues, but they show up in so many different ways. And I think it's
Mm.
a lot of problems most people have. It comes down to a lot of the same things, that we're afraid of something, we don't know what we're doing, or we don't feel like we're good enough. And that comes down to that unconditional self-acceptance, which is a great way to start healing that. But
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to. And, not wanting to avoid discomfort. And so as a result, people are doing the same behaviors and patterns to try and avoid feeling those things or doing that.
So how do you train someone to accept themselves?
It's a great question. So first off is to really have a look at how or why they're not accepting themselves. So what are some of the behaviors that they're doing when they're not accepting themselves? So it might be just being too agreeable. It might be not saying no. It might be not planning their day because they feel like if they do that, it's selfish. Like there's going to be lots of different behaviors and strategies that people are doing. A lot of them are to seek approval, because when we're not accepting ourselves, we do one of two things, and life revolves around this. Either we're seeking approval, will other people like me, will this look good, or avoiding disapproval. So I want to make sure I don't get that. And then that becomes the filter, the driver of all the behaviors, because of a belief underneath the surface that I'm not good enough as I am, or I'm wrong, or I'm bad. And this often gets formed in the early years and then just compounds and plays out for the rest of life, and it's unconscious. So the key is to really look at some of those behaviors that are specific for the person. It might be needing to look perfect all the time, or needing to not make any mistakes, or whatever that is. So let's have a look at what are the behaviors, what are those there, and start to change those. But really the key underneath the surface is looking at that belief of, well, if I make a mistake, or if somebody doesn't like me, then that means I'm not good enough, right? So that's like the core belief. So what we want to look at is consciously changing that belief, and then going and taking the behaviors to prove that that belief that people have is not true. So if there's a belief underneath the surface that if I'm not perfect, then I'm not worthy of love and connection and acceptance, then that means that they're just going to go around being perfect all the time, because the thought of being imperfect, or making a mistake, or letting somebody down, or being disapproved of is too scary to ever do it. So first is just to consciously make a decision to change that belief, to say that, you know what, I'm going to accept myself unconditionally, even if other people don't accept me, even if I make mistakes. And know that you can still feel the feelings of guilt or shame or whatever else comes up, but still make a conscious decision that I will unconditionally accept myself. So that's a choice that anybody can make, regardless of what's happened in the past, who's let them down, how they've been parented, or what experiences or traumas they've had. They can still make a decision in the present that those past events are not going to keep playing out, and continue to have that belief that they've got. So making that decision in the present to change that belief, then looking at the behaviors, and then it's where it comes to getting out in action and taking actions to prove that that's not the case. And you can do that with tiny little actions, like just asking for what you want, saying no to somebody, being assertive, making mistakes. You can deliberately say somebody's name wrong, because that's going to feel like uncomfortable, and do things like that, which your brain's like, there's no way we can do that, because we've got all of these rules and beliefs that say that we can't. And then go out and take those actions to start smashing through that belief.
So do something wrong, so to say, and still accept yourself for it.
Exactly, right. And you can even feel the
And that
feeling of
acceptance
shame.
is, sorry, go ahead.
You even feel the feeling of shame, which is, shame comes with, it's a feeling of I'm not worthy of acceptance, or that I'm bad or wrong, and it comes from doing something that's not socially acceptable, essentially. And so you can do the thing that's not socially acceptable, not something that's going to harm other people, or anything that's going to detract you from your goals, but just something that's not socially acceptable. Like you might put your arm up in a workshop, or at an event and ask a stupid question, and everyone's just look at you stupid. I remember when I was at university, I went back to university, so I was older, to study a master's in psychology, and I remember like practicing this at the time, and I just knew if I had a question, there's like 200 people in the lecture room, just put my hand up and ask it, even if it feels like it's a stupid question, just to train myself to be able to do it.
That's
Because
so
like,
great.
you know, because you asking the question is like saying, I don't know, and I want to know the
Yeah.
answer. And if it's a silly one, then you're just doing it, and everyone's going to look at you, and because we this is where we hold back, and we've got this little voice inside of us, our
And then
truth.
that's how you destroy your confidence, because you show yourself you're not good enough. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I teach. The behavior is showing your brain, you know?
it's training ourselves that every time we don't put our hand up or don't say anything, and then afterwards we're like, oh, I knew I should have asked that question, or I wish
Yeah.
I'd have done that. And we're not connecting with that true part of us, that voice of
Yeah.
us that is the authentic truth. It gets shut down and suppressed. And that part, the key with this is it doesn't have to be perfect. You can put your hand up and ask a stupid question and make a mistake. You can go and do something that completely messes up. But if you're
Yeah.
listening to that part of you and acting on it, yeah, you're saying that that part of me is important and it deserves to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you'll do enough things where
Yeah.
you'll ask a silly question, or you'll say something, or you'll mess up, and the other person will still accept you. And then you start to think, well, wow, maybe that belief that I had about myself wasn't true. But the real, like, the rubber hits the road with this when you're out in action, because you can think about this all day long, but unless you're doing it, nothing will change. And that's how like hypnosis works as well. If you hypnotize somebody, what they're doing is creating a new belief that gives them new behaviors. And from that moment, they step out of the office, they act in a new way and get a whole bunch of evidence that says it's safe to be like that. And
Mm.
that's why the belief carries on.
It's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
In a good way. That can go in the other way, where when you have the people who always want to be the center of attention and always try to make themselves seen, but mostly the kind of clients that you have are the ones that are not showing themselves. So that's a great way to do it, man. I have so much to say about that. From my own experience, I think how I trained myself was defiance. It was like pride. I got like bullied when I was a kid for like 7 years. And even though I got bullied, I usually always stood up, but like it was really a tough time for me. But later on, when I still had this like PTSD of like, I was literally, when I transferred to a different school and I had to do a presentation in front of class, I did it, sounded confident, sounded good. I was sweating inside because I still felt the attacks from the other school. And I remember I did the thing and I was like, inside I was hot. I'm not a person who sweats at all, like a lot. So it was just like heated up, but I was still sweating. I was sitting down next to this girl, I remember, and she was like, you did so great. And I was like, damn, I was so nervous. And she was like, I couldn't even tell. But it's like this thing where then later I went to acting schools and I got scholarships for these two acting schools. And I made it the point, but it came from pride. When we made the craziest exercise, the craziest improv in front of like the 30 kids that um all been casted from like all over the world, got scholarships to jump on stage first. From all the crazy ones, I would still make like jump on stage first, always try to be first, but it was like almost a sense of like, I need to do something with my life. I need to, and I know it's not going to happen if I'm not going to be first. And I rather have the pain of embarrassing myself, or I rather have the pain of the fear than the pain of being a nobody. So I trained myself to jump on stage, raise my hand, and be like really defined. Yeah, and there's some people who will not do it and more get quiet and quiet. And the quieter they get, and the more they react to these feelings of not doing it, the harder it is to get out of that, because the brain will just make everything anxious. Like that's the people who are scared of every social event. So there's many ways that human beings get to this point. I'm not saying that my way was the healthiest, because it still came from a place of um I want to be somebody, and it might still like involve some like fierceness, but there's many ways that people get to that, but it has to be that thing of doing the action. Like you have to eventually do it, and you have to show it to yourself. Are you saying that changing the belief, part of it is making your brain understand it? Because you talked about like kind of like just making the decision that you accept yourself. Is that what you were talking? Can you go a
I,
little bit deeper on
yeah, I
that
think that
part?
the point I want to make with that is that there's a lot of stuff we have in our brain unconsciously that tells us stories about ourselves and about the world. And people say, well, I can't change or it's too difficult. And I want people to be like really aware that it starts with a decision. And quite often these decisions happen when we hit a rock bottom point where we just say, no more, not enough of this, that's it, I have to change.
But
But
then mostly after 3 days, they give up again, right?
yeah, and then go back to it because they've forgotten that decision. And it's really like making this decision to be a certain way or do a certain thing and staying with that. And that's why redoing it. I was talking with a client recently.
Mm.
They were getting some great results in their personal life. And what they did was they set out what they wanted to do and they focused on it each day to put it into their subconscious of this is what I want to look for. This is what I want to decide. This is the filter that I want now. And then we were talking 3 months later about how everything that they wanted to do, they'd actually been applying. And they had no clue that that had matched up until I played it back for them. And they had to put it into their brain regularly. You know, we have to tell ourselves what we want regularly, what's important to us regularly, because otherwise we might just forget. And then we go back to unconscious patterns that are very highly established that are just running automatically all the time. And that's what can happen. It's what with me recently, I've been, on my phone a lot more because I've just fallen in back into old patterns. It can happen, but you catch it and then I make a decision. I don't want to be on my phone all day. I
Yeah.
want to be conscious of when I use it. I want to be in control of that. But this core belief of like being, essentially, this is the point I want to make. Our worth as a human being, for people to say that I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough, it's just a moral judgment that they're making. It's a decision that they're making. And we can make that decision to say that I have worth and value as a human being just for
Mhm.
being alive and being here. And that's a decision that you get to make. You get to make. And nobody else can actually decide or validate your worth or value as a human being externally. They can say things to you, but you have to decide whether you agree with that or not. Now, a lot of this will happen unconsciously, which is why someone might insult you and you automatically feel uncomfortable emotions, or you feel shame, or you feel whatever you feel. That's fine. Like, feel those feelings. But my point is that you can feel those feelings but with a new story attached to it of I can feel the feeling of shame or not being worthy of connection, but really, really know the truth that I am. And I make a decision that I'm a worthwhile and valuable person, and actually nothing can change that. No decision that I make, no action that I take can change that. And it's a place that we can always return to. It's a safe, like, wonderful place that we can come back to, and a decision that we can always choose to make in any moment.
Yeah, I think I read that in the there's a book called I think You Are Enough or You're Good Enough. Do you know who I'm talking
Is
about?
that Marissa Peer?
Probably.
I've not
It's like
read
a
it,
small
but
book. It's like
oh,
this thick, maybe not that thick, but it's really just about that, just that we just good enough without doing anything. Now, go ahead.
yeah. So just to say, the one point that I want to make on this is that you're always worthy and valuable as a human being, and worthy of acceptance and connection. That doesn't change. It doesn't matter what you go out and do. That's
Yeah.
always there. However, it doesn't mean that we're deserving of it, because there's two different types of like value. Essentially, there's
Deserving of
worth
what?
of deserving of anything, because that's entitlement. So it's like
Oh yeah.
saying,
No.
right, like, I
Yeah.
work really hard, I put in all this effort,
Yeah, just
you
because you
know.
accept yourself, no one's supposed to give you $1 million.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
just because I accept myself, just because I do all the work on myself and I show up, that my relationship's going to work out, or that the other person's going to love me, because you can't control that. And that's like the entitlement trap. Well, yeah, but I did all this work and I do all this stuff for this person and they don't appreciate me. Well, Human beings are imperfect and they don't always appreciate each other. So it's really just knowing that, yeah, you do all of that. And do you know what? You are worthy of that person connecting with you, but it doesn't mean they're going to. And I think when we can let go of that attachment, that's when we have more control of ourselves, of like knowing this is a decision we make about our own value and worth, not about other people's value and worth. And we can also make that decision and say, I'm going to accept other people unconditionally. Doesn't mean that I will always like them or like what they do, but I can accept them as a human being. It's a great place to be. Like, people really pick up on it because they don't feel judged. They know you might judge their behavior or want them to change that, but you're not trying to fundamentally change someone. And it's a good place to be. But it's really knowing that it doesn't mean that we're going to get what we want. It doesn't mean that things are going to work out, but it means you're worthy of it working out. You're worthy of getting what you want. It's possible for you, and that's something that you have a right to as a human being. You have a right to ask for what you want, to go out and do the things you want to do. It just doesn't mean you're going to get it. And I think taking that expectation off takes the pressure off, because it's like, oh, okay, right, now I can go for it. But if I don't get it, I'm still worthy and I'm still okay.
Yeah, it's like us born and being alive is already the jackpot. Everything else is just a bonus. But it's the comparison in the world to say, oh, this is a celebrity, this is a rapper, that person's more successful, that person has this many followers, is what kills people, which I do understand. I totally have empathy with it, because if you see like someone else having so much and you don't have anything, then that can hurt. But we can go for it. Do you believe life is fair?
No, it's definitely not fair.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that many people, that's where you get pain if you believe it's fair. A lot.
I learned,
if you try to make it fair, I think that's where it's going to be hard.
Yeah, because you're that's a great point. You're trying to make it fair. You're not in line with reality. Like, we actually experience quite a lot of peace when reality is as we think it is. And that's what acceptance really is, because we're not trying to change things. I experience this a lot with poker. Poker is one of the most unfair games that you'll ever play, right? So you study, you work hard, you put in all the effort, and you play really well, and you can lose for a year because you can just lose and lose and lose and lose and lose.
You just get the fucked up cards and you
get really bad run of cards. You get the good cards and you get them in good, and then the bad card comes, like you get a pair of aces in against a pair of twos, and then you're 80% favorite and a two comes out, and that will happen 5 times in a row, 10 times in a row, even though the probabilities are really unlikely. And this is the point. It's entitlement. It can happen, and it's entitlement that says, well, I worked really hard, I put in all the effort, I'm better than this other player, and I lost, and I shouldn't have lost because I'm better.
You can only create the atmosphere. You can create the atmosphere and prepare and build the skills, but then you cannot say, like, I can prepare everything to make good videos and do my best, but then if the audience is receptive, I can learn from it and adjust it. But it's
random. You go and put all the effort in and make the best video, right? And you put it out and it gets no likes and it gets no views. And you're like, what is this? And then someone goes and makes a video of them like doing a little jiggle dance for 3 seconds, and they've got no experience, no nothing. And people are like, that's the best thing I've ever seen. It's got like 100 million views. They get hundreds of thousands of followers. And then, but the point here is that if someone sits in and says, well, that's not, that you can sit there and say, that's not fair. And I'll agree, it's not fair. But when they say, that's not fair, I should have got those views, it should have gone how I wanted it to go, that's when someone's going to upset themselves, because it's not true. It shouldn't have gone like that.
They could procrastinate too, or I would just make another video, just make another video, just make another thing, just make another thing. On some point, you get better, you build skills, you will. It's like people, and I used to do this one thing, but it's really the big picture. You just got to keep going. If you build more skills and give more value, you're going to be like a well-trained soldier or well-trained businessman or well-trained whatever. You're going to make good things, but it needs to have that repetition.
And I think also you need a level of acceptance in order to keep going. Because if
Yeah,
you didn't have acceptance, you'd be so hung up on that video not working out.
exactly.
Well, I'm not going to bother again. That should have
Yeah,
worked out how I wanted it to. And that's how, if we let go of these like rigid shoulds and musts and demands of how we think the world should go, and actually start saying, well, it's not fair, but that's how it is, then you can actually work with it. You're back on to making the next video. And I think the key point is just to distinguish between, there's like usefulness and value that we put out in the world. And I highly recommend anybody building that. And that can be the skill of sharing videos or helping people to communicate, or any role that you do in life, being a good teacher, like cooking good food, being good at your job, being good in relationships, having relationship skills, whatever that is, those are valuable things that make you more useful. Like the same way Ronaldo is a very useful footballer and people appreciate him for that. But the person part is just different. It's separate. The value that you have as a person is there, but it's not confusing the two, because people get entitled of,
yeah,
well, I'm worthwhile and valuable as a person, so therefore I should get what I want and people should love
yeah,
me. No, it doesn't mean anyone should love you. It just means you're worthy of it. Now go out and create the skills and build the skills that are going to help you realize that.
yeah.
But know that there's no guarantee. And if you get that, you're in alignment with the way things are, the way that life is, and you're going to be a lot happier and a lot more fulfilled as well.
I love that. Do you see a difference in will in your clients?
And when you say will, is that like the
Will means like
determination?
the the willingness to apply the tools that you teach them.
I see the difference change when they get these changes underneath and they're actually taking more action, because will and determination goes up when action goes up. But in the beginning, it's like moving a boulder up a hill. The first few steps, there's a lot of reluctancy there, a lot of holding on to old identities and patterns. But once it's moving, a few weeks later, and then it's like they're moving the ball themselves, like, because they can see that they want to do it because they're motivated by the results that they're getting. Because things like validation and feedback are really useful. Like, it's great to be validated because you're seeing, it's like putting videos out there. You might do it not for the likes, but when you get a whole bunch of likes and comments come back saying, this is great, this has really helped me, it does validate that you're doing something right. You are making an impact. If you don't get any
You
comments or
touch
likes come
people.
back,
Yeah,
it's then you might have to think, well, maybe I need to change my strategy,
exactly.
because
Yeah,
it's not, and someone can say, this is the way I am, or this is what I do. Well, great. If you want to keep doing that, fine. But sometimes we can adjust our strategy based on the feedback and validation or lack of that we get. If someone's been in 10 relationships and they've not worked out and they're like, well, nobody's great and all these people are messed up, it's just looking at, well, maybe look at what role you're playing in that, right? You're the common
yeah,
denominator here. So what are the actions you're taking or not taking that you could change? Your worth, your value's there, but what's the value and skills and thing plus that you're bringing into the relationship?
yeah. I can see this obsession in our generation, not from me, but I see it like outside a lot of times of like trying to make things fair on one side but mostly it seems like for themselves, because everybody's like has their own like activity, their own like motive, and they're like, yeah, make it fair, but it looks more like, oh, make it fair for my tribe, or so I seem special. And this thing of, I think that's more of a like toxic accept. It's like the same thing that, yeah, I can accept myself, but I don't need all of you guys to call me a certain way so I'm happy. This comes from, it seems to me it comes from people trying to find an excuse for not doing the things they actually want to do. They're too scared to do the things they want to do, and then they build excuse. They say, okay, I'm scared, I feel like I'm not good enough to go for the things I want to do, but here's the easier thing I can do. I can call myself a certain way, and I want everybody else to love me for that and give me money for that. I don't see a way to reach these amount of people. I'm trying to, when I make my content, I'm trying to give to the people who are, so to say, ready. I just give it out, and the people who are ready, they watch it. But it seems it's a big amount of people nowadays. Maybe it's because of the internet, maybe it's loud. But what are you making of all of that? Do you think it's better to just focus on the people who really want to grow? And yeah, what do you make of all of that, what I just said?
Yes, it's just people can only change or understand something if they want to. We can't force anybody to do anything. And I think it's accepting people as they are, and that they're just going to get the results they get from what they're thinking, believing, and what they're doing. And there's no right or wrong about that. It's just that that's what they're going to get. I think if we go around like demanding that people should give us what we want or change because we say they should, then it's just not going to happen. It's not how people work. People don't like being told what to do. And again, it comes down to a bit of entitlement, really, of like, you should do what I want, versus them presenting the evidence and saying this is what the benefits are, and this is how it could help people and help us connect. So for me, I'm really about just empowering the individual to go with the way of life and the way things are, and be accepting of that and accepting of themselves, whilst taking the actions that are going to move them forward.
I love that. I don't want to keep you too long. I know the time, you have a busy schedule today. So you cannot go longer. And I want to just say thank you so much for coming. There was so many great things, and I'm sure we're going to do some future podcasts together. If anybody wants to reach you, wants to work with you, wants to follow you, wants to learn more about self-acceptance and all of the great things you teach, how can they find you?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram, at The Perception Coach, and on TikTok at The Perception Coach. You can direct message me on Instagram. I'm usually pretty good at picking those up. Or you can find me on my website, which is www.theperceptioncoach.com, and you can connect with me there.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jon, for coming. I'm excited to have future conversations with you. If you guys have questions, ask them in the comments. Me and Jon can answer them, and we're excited to see you guys in future conversations. Thank you so much, Jon. And next time, maybe we talk about parenting and other things and marriage, because a lot of people want to know about that. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, I'd love that. And thanks so much for having me here. I really enjoyed it. Cheers,
I
man.
love that.